Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the Dolphins Brawl. I am your host, Louis Sung, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Chad Ronenbaum. And joining us today is another very fun favorite person of the show. We have Ron Caniff making his return to the show. Ron, how are you, my friend?
Much better, thank you.
So, yeah, Ron's been fighting off some stuff, and he's back and ready to rock and roll. So, and there's plenty of stuff to talk about. We probably didn't get to everything we wanted to in the last show, and now, of course, Ron's going to give his own input. According to what Ron's been tweeting up on Twitter, he's basically going to set us straight. So I'm interested in hearing what it is that he has to say about that. And I see that Chad's got his good old aqua orange Dolphins hat back on, so we've got ourselves the colors represented again. And that takes care of all of our pre-show stuff. Let's head right back into it. And quite frankly, the discussions we're going to have today, once again, they're going to talk about our free agency moves. We're going to talk about a little bit about the draft. I have a sneaking suspicion that with all the discussions about the Dolphins moving all the way up to number 1 overall so that we can do what we initially planned to do in the first place, not a fan. But we'll get into that a little bit later. We're just going to go ahead and start talking about free agency. So Chad and I already gave our discussions. We'll rehash some of it a little bit, but first we're going to hand the floor over to Ron. Ron, free agency, the floor is yours, my friend.
Let's take it one side of the ball at a time. I love what we did with defense. I think that we found players that can fit as part of a team. There was nobody that we went and got and said, this guy's going to go get us 12 or 15 sacks. This guy's going to go get us 150 tackles. This guy's got to go get us 8 interceptions. There's not one player you can pick to where the history of what they've done states that. Every single player we got on the defensive side fits a role, fits a purpose, which is exactly how this defense was designed in New England and exactly what Flores brought to Miami and started to show some promise, even with, if you want to call it a bit of a ragtag bunch. I mean, probably the players wouldn't appreciate that. Let's just say they were lesser known names. A lot of teams, they definitely wouldn't have been starting. Maybe some of them wouldn't have even been making the roster. So now we've added guys like Van Noy, Lawson, etc. And nobody's there to be the fix-all. There was no Sue type signing where, oh, this guy's going to just be the anchor of the line. There isn't one of that. Everybody's going to be in there and participate, keep everybody fresh. Nobody's going to really play a ton of snaps. There's going to be a lot of rotation and a lot of just role playing, which is what this design of the defense is. So I love it. I mean, I love what they did. None of the contracts are anything where we're like, oh my God, we're going to have so much dead money when we cut this guy in 4 years. I mean, most of them will be good after a couple of years. I mean, they're almost all like 2-year contracts. If it doesn't work this year and the next, you can move on with very little hurt or hit to the cap.
And as an added note, I'm just going to interject here. Pretty much everybody that the Dolphins signed is under 30. So there's that.
Oh, and that was my next point. I mean, they're almost all mid-20s guys. So I thought it was perfect. Yes, we did pay a lot for Byron Jones. He is a fantastic cover corner. If to play the defense like Flores really wants to play, man, you gotta have some corners, a couple corners that can play man. And do we ever now with Jones and X? I mean, are we keeping X? I think so. I believe we are. And I get concerned with the injuries. I'm still a little concerned with that off-season issue he had with the domestic violence. I don't know what's come of that yet, or if anything will come of that. So I have a little bit of hesitation to get super excited about the duo of Jones and Howard. But I'm optimistic that if both those players are on the field at the same time, it really makes our defense much tougher. And what it does, it allows them to scheme and play the defense they want to play. And that's a lot of man on those wide receivers that can follow, not wide receivers that necessarily just play one side of the field or the other. So I think that's important. On the other side of the ball, obviously the glaring issue going into free agency was the offensive line. Again, what else is new, right, Miami? I don't know that we did much to fix that. I mean, do we improve it a little with Karras and Flowers? Yeah, but we have a long ways to go there. Obviously, the draft is going to have to take it had to be a big part of that rebuild. And at this point, I just don't believe it's something that can be rebuilt this season. Had we gone out and really decided to focus on that side of the ball versus the defense and really tried to go over some couple more bigger contracts that we saw people go after, like some tackles and things like that. Yeah, I believe it could have been fixed in one season. Buffalo did it. They flipped their offensive line in one season. At least they did with 4 out of 5 guys at the beginning of last season. So it can be done, but that isn't the strategy we employed. Obviously, we'll probably look to draft some linemen. Not just probably. We will be drafting some linemen in this draft, especially with 14 picks, if we even draft all 14 players. But which I don't know that we'll actually bring 14 new rookies that we drafted to camp.
Yeah, I doubt
it. It's not likely. But yeah, we're going to have to at least take one of those offensive linemen and get a tackle. And then maybe after the draft, we go get, I hate using the expression because Omar Kelly always used it, so I wish I could come up with something better, but I can't. We'll have to go get those dented cans, those,
the second wave of free agency.
The second wave after draft free agents. We'll probably end up having to shore up at least some depth with one or two of those guys. So a lot of work to do on that offensive line for sure. But I love what we did on defense. We have some work to do at safety, I believe, as well. But I think we can also address that in the draft. I feel good about trying to get a safety when we start getting into 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th round picks. We can find. Rashad Jones was a 5th round pick. You know what I mean? Like, you can find some pretty good safeties in the middle of the draft. The Dolphins haven't had a great track record with Greer, even Greer as a head of college scouting. If you look through the career of Greer as the head of our college scouting since, I believe it was 2007, we've only had one offensive lineman drafted after the 1st round who was starter quality, and that was Samson Satelli. That was pretty much the beginning of when he was there. Since then, the track record is awful. Now, you can say, well, there was a couple guys, Ron, that we drafted. They did bad. Now they're on other teams and they're starters. Okay. A couple guys, yeah, slipped through our fingers because we had some poor coaching with Philbin, etc. But mostly the track record's not great there. So don't feel great about using 2nd, 3rd, 4th round picks to say, oh, we're going to draft some guys there and find starters. We just have not been able to do that. It's why we're in the situation we're in now. 1st round, under the Greer, if you count the Greer time as being head of college scouting, 1st round, he's killed it every single time. The guy has crushed it every time, hadn't missed. But after the 1st round, I don't know. I don't feel great about it, so I'm a little nervous there. But overall, I give the free agency period an A, just mostly from what he did on the defensive side of the ball.
Whew, okay. That was a bit of an explosion right at the end there, but anyway. I don't know. I can definitely see where you're coming from with the whole Chris Greer history thing. Again, Dolphins offensive line history drafting has been a mess. We still have nightmares about Dallas Thomas. That alone is enough to say, yeah, there's something wrong there. Michael Dieter already looks like he's not going to be doing much contributing. And that's the weird thing, is that coming from Wisconsin, which is supposed to be, it is Wisconsin, right? Just to be clear, it is Wisconsin. Like, I feel like half the time, like, this whole self-quarantine thing is like making the days feel like, is it Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday? I don't know. So it's like, so Wisconsin is supposed to be like the breeding ground for offensive linemen. And so we drafted Dieter in the 3rd round thinking, okay, he's going to be good. Nope. Don't know why, but he's not. And again, Dallas Thomas, he's no good. We've had, like, I can't think of, let me just think of some more names. There's been a bunch of them that you just think of. Jamil Douglas. He's one of the guys who kind of came on stronger lately.
We've had a plethora of 2nd, 3rd round guys that didn't work out. Again, I understand that they've gone to other teams and possibly played better.
How can I forget him?
Well, Jonathan Martin, he was a 2nd rounder. Again, we tried to move him at left tackle as a starter, and he pretty much. He just wasn't. He wasn't starter quality, obviously, and we kind of bullied him out of here. Oh, sorry, too soon. Nah.
Never.
Not even hardly a grin from Chad on that one. But well, it's not
okay.
It's not because it was a mean joke. It's just because it was a stupid one. But it's not a great track record. Now, I know that people are going to tell me that we have other guys now helping make those decisions. We have a different head of college scouting, but we still have Greer in charge. And, you can say, well, other people were making the decisions during those Greer times. Well, then he's the head of college scouting for 14 or 13, 12 years. They didn't listen to one of his suggestions one time? Of course they did. Or why did they keep him around? So that's obviously not a strong suit. I'm hoping that we've got some guys in there that can do some better evaluation on these second round and beyond offensive linemen, because you can't just be spending every single year spending your first round picks on offensive linemen because you can't seem to figure out in second and third round. I mean, we can't just keep doing that year after year over and over again because we're passing on other talent because other teams can seem to get that figured out, but we can't, or at least the good teams can get it figured out. So that's been a frustration for me that I've voiced on Twitter multiple times. Beyond that, I feel pretty good about where we're heading for the draft, and I feel really good about what we did in free agency.
Makes sense to me. Do you want me to respond to the point?
Yeah.
Is that okay? I agree with you guys on the track record. I think a lot of times when you're dealing with the drafting and the general managers and stuff, I think it's usually more of a group. At least it has been in Miami. And so when I look at the last, say 10 years, I'm looking at Philbin and Gase. I think they had a lot of input on who was drafted. And so, and I think Philbin was supposed to be really experienced as an offensive line coach, if I'm not mistaken. And so I'm guessing he had some input. And, I don't want to paint him as having no success. I think Larmy Tunsil, obviously he's a high first round pick. I think
first round pick though. He's a first round. Everything well. Pouncey first round pick.
Yeah, the first round pick. And
first round pick.
Yeah. No, you're absolutely right. But I think with that, and I've made this point, shows you weren't on probably with Ron, but I think a lot of the problem is with the Dolphins hasn't been exclusively with just drafting. And I think a lot of people do it because everybody likes to be their little fantasy GM and you're doing your mock drafts, and people base the success of the player on the draft. And so like the GM must have had a poor draft. And I think what gets lost a lot of times is how well they're coached and developed once they arrive on the team. And I think that's a big difference on some of these other teams that get these guys in the fourth round and turn them into quality linemen. And I think it's because they're coached. And I think
how many Patriots players get Dante Scarnecchia to work with them, and suddenly they're all pro guards and tackles. It happens. And that's kind of my point.
And obviously we had like the Forrester, and I think we've just had some very poor coaching, literally. And I'll continue to say this, and I feel adamantly, I think Adam Gase is a terrible coach, and I don't think he hires a great assistant. And I don't think Philbin or Gase were good at all at developing players. And so I think the draft, yeah, you could say we didn't draft well, but I think we equally didn't develop well either. And so I think those are both problems. I do believe with Brian Flores, he's very good at developing defensive backs. I feel strongly about that. And so I think giving him Jones and Howard, who I do think we're going to keep Xavier Howard. He may get suspended a game or two, but that is not going anywhere provided he doesn't do anything else wrong, because they already got thrown out. Like he's not legally getting charged with anything. So assuming that we're going to have Xavier Howard and Byron Jones, I think with Flores, you can get away with getting the D-backs like in those third rounds and fourth rounds, and he can turn them into quality defensive backs because he can help develop them. And he's shown that with the guys like Nick Needham. I mean, these are guys off the street, and he's developing them into. I thought he played pretty well, in the second half.
Yeah, I mean, how much were we cursing that guy in the preseason?
Right.
I mean, seriously, I thought, and I know somebody on Twitter made the joke, we need him off our team. I mean, that guy was horrendous. And then all of a sudden we bring him back. I'm like, when they brought this guy back and started him back there, I said, everyone thought we are tanking. This is it. This is, if any proof that we are trying to lose games, was putting Nick Needham back there. And the guy didn't just hold his own. I thought there was moments where he played fantastic. It worked. He was coached well to play in the scheme and do his job. So I hate using New England slang, but terminology, but he was doing his job and he was doing it well. So that's exciting. Yeah. So I'm excited if we go draft a couple safeties in the second, third round and see what they could do with them.
Right. So that's kind of the point I'm making, though, is that I think for the Dolphins right now, that's one thing I trust with Flores is that he can develop defensive backs pretty well. So I think there, in terms of the linemen, with your comment saying that you can't continue to draft linemen in the first round, normally that's true, but we actually can right now because in the next 2 years we have 5 first-round picks. So
there is a proviso there. We'll get into that.
But if you have to, use 2 of your first. I'm all for this season using 2 of our first-round picks to take the tackles because it's a deep tackle class rated talent-wise in this draft, and we don't have any good tackles on our team right now. And so I say go get them in the draft in the first round if that's what you need to do. They're expensive. That is an expensive position to get in free agency. Probably the only possible option in free agency is not in free agency yet is Trent Williams, and he's 32 years old, and he's probably got a list of problems you're dealing with anyway. Like obviously he's not getting along with the Redskins, and he's been out of football almost for a year or two now, and I don't think that's a great
quarterback
option.
Money from the last reports. It's like
wants a lot of money.
No quarterback money. You're not a quarterback.
So I think that was part of the plan. I think there wasn't a great tackle option. Maybe Conklin was probably the best lineman that was available, and the Browns paid him really well. So I think they did what they could. I think they really wanted Thuney from the Patriots, and the Patriots knew that, so they tagged him. And so, am I really excited about Eric Flowers? No, I think he's better than anything we had last year at guard, but that's not saying a lot. Not getting into that too, but he had a good year at guard on a bad Redskins team, and so maybe he found his niche. That's what I'm hoping. They didn't give him a crazy contract, so hopefully he can function as one of the guards. I think Jesse Davis can be the other guard. I'm hoping he gets some competition in there. I think Karras gives them a veteran center, which they needed. He's not going to be our long-term answer at center, but that's kind of a position you want a veteran in there. I don't think you want to start a rookie center right out of the gate. So
is Karras really a veteran if he only really got started like last year and it was only 13 games? Like Karras wasn't the incumbent.
No, he's not a top center in the league veteran, but he's going to be a lot further ahead than a guy you're bringing out of college. That's kind of the point I'm making. And we didn't really have anybody. I mean, we were talking about Dieter, but we just didn't have a center. We didn't have a line. That's why Brian Fitzpatrick was our leading rusher. Is we could not run the football, and so that is what it is. But I think though that's my thought on the offensive line part is it has been notoriously bad. I'm hoping that Flores has got somebody in there to help out with that. I think, Ron, you guys both talked about the youth. We talked about that a little bit last week, and that's very accurate. I made the comment that's kind of a Jeff Ireland type philosophy. He always liked getting second contract guys. What's really neat to me is we got some second contract guys on contracts that aren't obscene. What we paid Shaq Lawson and even Van Noy, he's getting a lot of money right now, but these aren't contracts that are hard to move on from in 2 to 3 years that become a big pile of dead money. And we were talking last week, Ron, if you listen to the show, about how other teams are doing that. And that used to be us even 2 years ago. Like I mentioned, the Cowboys given.
I did Robert listen. Quinn. I always listen, even through my coronavirus. Okay.
I love it. Well, I was making the point that the Dolphins 2 or 3 years ago would have given somebody like Robert Quinn that 5-year, $70 million deal that the Bears gave him. And I'm like, wow, in 2 years, that's going to be dead money. I just don't see Robert Quinn going more than a couple more years. And he's going to be a number they're trying to get rid of because he's heavy on their cap. So I thought from a managerial standpoint, we did pretty well in the offseason. And I also made the point that I think we're getting these guys because they want to play for this organization and for Brian Flores. And that's been something we haven't had in a while, which I think is really helping us out.
The opposite of where no one wants to go to the Jets. They keep missing out because, I said this before, players talk. You got a 3-year history plus with Miami. You've got now a year history with the Jets. And these players talk. Players talk to players. You have a spread of enough players that have played under Gase that almost every single free agent in the NFL played with somebody in college or in the pros that played under Gase and knows you don't want to go play for that guy. Don't go play for them. That's a time bomb getting ready to explode. That's getting ready to be a dumpster fire. Sam Darnold is seeing ghost. What have you?
No, it's true.
I'm telling you that team to me is just headed for like 2-14 because I think Gase is just gonna eventually. They're just gonna run him into the ground. People just don't believe in him. He's not a good head coach. He's not a leader of men, in my opinion. He blames everything on everyone else every time he gets a chance. That's not what a head coach does, and that's just one issue with him. But anyway, it's not the Adam Gase show, so enough of that.
No, but it's so bizarre, though. You think about it. Like, there are some people still defending this man, and I'm just thinking to myself, how and why? Is it because you relate to his personality or something? Because it can't be with his objective coaching career so far as a head coach, because aside from the 1 year where he literally went against his own grain and let Ajayi run the ball like mad, he's been god awful in everything else. And we were fooled by it because he let Ajayi do that, and we thought, oh, well, he finally got the picture. No, it was very begrudging and he didn't want to do it. So, and now that he's getting to do what he wants, his ego finally took over. That's when everything kind of imploded on itself.
Yeah, I'm glad we've moved on from that. That's all I can say. I think I'll be surprised if he's still coaching the team in a year or two. That's just based on what I've seen. But yep, that's not our problem. So we have
not our problem.
Stuff going on.
And speaking of stuff that we got going on, time for to get to the real meat of this show, and probably where Ron wants to discuss things. Now, you said something very interesting, Chad, and this is where I want to go ahead and do my little spiel of the show. This is where everybody out there kind of hits mute because they don't want to get through me. Like, fast forward, Lewis is talking. Okay, so just it's going now, folks. Okay, so all this talk about draft of trading up to get Tua or trading up to get Joe Burrow, and you said, Chad, that we have all these picks that we can go ahead and get our offensive tackles and we can finally secure the offensive line. And I said there was a proviso there, and the proviso is very simple. If you want to be able to draft those top tackles, you need to have those picks in order to draft those top tackles. If you decide to go out of your way to trade up to get Tua from like 5 to 3, if you think he's not going to make it to 5, then you have to trade up for him with the Lions, who are going to be asking for a lot because they know the Dolphins are rich with draft picks. And even more so, if you want to trade all the way up to the first overall pick. Chad, you have said that you feel like the Bengals want to get out from that spot. Even if that is the case, it's not like they're just going to take whatever's offered to them and run with it. They are going to be saying, you better give us a king's ransom to be able to get in our spot. Because whether they want to be there or not, the number 1 overall pick has all the leverage in the draft. They really do. Because, yes, the Dolphins can afford to pay it, but the question of whether they should or not is not being asked. Do you really believe that Joe Burrow is so much of a guaranteed thing, is really going to be the next coming of Tom Brady or whoever you think it is, that he's worth giving up everything to get him? I don't. I can't think of anybody who really believes that much. They've been saying things like, if the Dolphins believe he's the guy, they need to do whatever it takes to get him. Okay, I get what you're saying, but how much is whatever it takes? Because when you say things like whatever it takes, blanket statements like that, you're literally saying, I don't care if we have to give up all 3 first rounders. I don't care if you have to give up all 14 draft picks. You have to go and get that guy, which is beyond ridiculous. And maybe I'm engaging in some hyperbole here, because nobody's going to give up all their draft picks for one guy, aside from like what it was, the one
Ricky Williams
trade for Ricky Williams. Yeah. So, but it's like, even then, it's Mike Ditka. Yeah. It's like, you did that, and ultimately Ricky turned out to be a stud, but he didn't take your team to the Super Bowl, you know? And that's the problem. And yes, it's a quarterback. It's a little different. But again, this is the whole discussion. Are you so sure in Joe Burrow, or are you so sure in Tua that all you need is this guy and you're set for the next 20 years? Be like a Tom Brady. I don't think there's any quarterback in this draft, or even the next upcoming draft. Like, we're talking about Trevor Lawrence. Like, do you really believe Trevor Lawrence is so special that all you have to do is draft him and you are good to go for the next decade and a half? I really don't think that they're that special. They're not so good that coming out of college for a fact that they will be the next Peyton Manning. That's the kind of trade you make for that. That's somebody you trade for a proven thing. Like, there's talk about, oh, well, instead of getting a new guy, just go and trade Deshaun Watson. Bill O'Brien is taking peanuts for all his players anyway. Might as well go and see what you can get for him. And I would be more willing to go and get Deshaun Watson, because I at least know what he can do, rather than trade up all those picks and take my chances on somebody who may or may not develop. So And this is why I'm saying I want to stand pat at 5. I want to use all 3 first rounders because there are some very serious positions of need that still require top level talent. Offensive tackle, priority 1. Pass rusher, yeah, Emmanuel Ogbah and Shaq Lawson, priority 1. Still need top pass rusher. You need you need a top safety because Bobby McCain and Eric Rowe, they're both good, but neither of them are that superstar. And we got rid of Rashad Jones, so he doesn't even get a chance to prove he can still do it. And again, running back, we need one. Jordan Howard, he's going to try to prove himself. But you have Jordan Howard, Patrick Laird, Myles Gaskin, and not to take anything away from Gaskin, but he's not going to wow the NFL. That's where you need somebody like a DeAndre Swift. And if you're giving up all your picks to get one guy, you're not going to be able to get those guys. You're just not.
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead,
I was
Ron.
like, who's going?
I know. I agree with you, Ron. I'm in agreement with you. I don't think you trade up.
With me, not Ron.
Well, I'm sorry, Tom. I'm in agreement with what you're saying, Lewis. I don't think you trade a whole bunch of picks to move up. I personally don't think there's going to be much competition at all for teams trying to move up. And I'm just doing the math with who their quarterbacks are, what they're paying them, and what they have in capital to trade to try to move up. And so is Joe Burrow the number 1 rated prospect? Yeah. I've been making the point for a few shows, that maybe not the last one, but I have made the point that I think quarterbacks are you're flipping a coin. I really don't believe that whether it's Tua or Joe Burrow or Justin Herbert, I think all 3 of them have about the same probability of succeeding in the NFL. You just don't know if they're going to be able to do it or not. And for that reason, I don't think I'm looking at it from my point of view. So if I'm the Dolphins, I'm not too eager to trade up my picks because I'm not that worried right now. And I don't think the Dolphins are about trying to be a Super Bowl contender right now. I think they're trying to be a consistent playoff contender, which we haven't been in 2 decades. And so, yeah, we need a quarterback, but we need to build a solid football team. And things have changed. Tom Brady is no longer in the division. The Patriots, I don't believe, are a powerhouse right now. And we've had to deal with that for 20 years. And so we've had decent teams. The Dolphins have had decent teams. Joe Philbin had some decent teams. Sperano had some decent teams. We were just in the division with a team that was always probably the top 2 or 3 team in the league. And so it makes it really hard to win in the NFL when you can never win your division. And, we've won it once in the last 20 years and nobody else has but the Patriots. And so that's going to be changing. And so to me right now, the smart thing to do is try to put together as a complete a team as possible. And I think with Ryan Fitzpatrick and Josh Rosen, they're not a terrible quarterback combination relative to what other teams have right now. And so I'm fine going with those guys and trying to win football games. And I think that's what Brian Flores ultimately is focused on right now, is trying to win football games. Do we want the next great quarterback to try to win several Super Bowls? Yeah, of course we do. But I don't think you have that assured that any of those guys are going to work out very well. So I really would be shocked if the Dolphins are going to trade up. What I do think they'll do is make an offer. Like, if you can get Joe Burrow, I'm all for it. And so what I think is realistic would be maybe Miami offering like their 26th pick in the first round, along with maybe a second to move up, and the Bengals can take that if they want or they don't. To elaborate on what you were saying, I don't know that the Bengals are wanting to move down, meaning they don't want Joe Burrow. What I was telling you is that the Bengals aren't in the Dolphins' position. They don't have all the extra draft picks, and they're in a division that I think that's quite a bit harder than the AFC East. I think the Ravens got better, and they were already very good. I think the Browns got better. They're no longer an easy win. They're at least in the middle of the pack, if not better. And the Steelers are always pretty tough, and they still have Ben Roethlisberger and Juju Smith, and they're not a really bad team. And so I think if you're the Bengals, you've got Andy Dalton right now and a whole bunch of needs. I don't see how drafting Joe Burrow helps right now. I think the Bengals are just going to get kicked around that league if they use that pick on Joe Burrow. What the Bengals really want to do is trade that pick, and if they can get, like, say, Justin Herbert at 5 and trade with the Dolphins, if Miami offers them one of their firsts along with their 5th and then the 2nd round pick, to me the Bengals may take that because that's their best chance to try to compete in their own division. If they take it, they take it. They don't, they don't. I think this talk about Miami giving all 3 of their first round picks, that's ludicrous. That's not going to happen. not for that.
Yeah,
pick.
the talk is really more about do whatever it takes, and that people have speculated that that's what it would take, because you're jumping from 5 to the very first pick in the draft. That's a lot. That's generally a lot that you speculate giving up for.
It's not happening. And the only team that's going to give up a lot might be the Chargers, assuming they don't sign Cam Newton, which I think they may. But there's not teams right now that can afford to give up a whole pile of picks to move up for Joe Burrow that desperately need him too. I just don't see that. And so the teams that have the older quarterbacks like the Saints and Patriots and stuff, they're so far back in the draft.
Not the Patriots, not anymore.
They're still in the 20s. For them to move all the way up to number 1 would be way, way more than what the Dolphins would trade. And so I just don't think there's any competition, I guess is the point I'm making, for that pick. And so if you're Miami, you give them a reasonable offer, and if they take it, sure, go up and get Burrow. If they don't, then you have to be smart. That's all.
All right.
Okay, Ron, set us straight.
Go, Ron.
Okay. All right. Let's take the Burrow thing first, because I just want to begin it and end it quick. First of all, I personally don't want to move up for Burrow. He's a one-hit college wonder. We don't know anything about this guy. He played for LSU the year before, and he sucked. He threw 16 touchdowns, then all of a sudden he threw 60. Doesn't really impress me that much. He was a backup to Haskins at Ohio State. I mean, give kudos to LSU for recognizing talent and feeling like he could win with him and being right. But, man, I mean, when I watch him play physically, it doesn't look special. Trevor Lawrence looked special. Andrew Luck looked special. This guy just put up a lot of big numbers, was on a really good team. He seems to be a very accurate quarterback. He has an average arm. That's not always the most important thing, how big your arm is. Tom Brady doesn't have a big arm. You know what I mean? He's been very successful. I would even say Peyton Manning didn't have a huge arm. He was just very accurate, could read defenses, etc. But still, there's nothing that jumps off the page for me that says Joe Burrow is this can't-miss, once-a-decade talent. So to go and give up a bunch of picks to go get him, I think, is ludicrous. People are just throwing that out there because they're bored and they got nothing else to talk about but football free agency. So, and you have to consider, too, what we're going on now. There's no other sports going on. The only thing that was really going on was the NFL free agency period and the NFL offseason, I should say. So now isn't just so now people who would be just general sports reporters and all that, now they're flooding the market with all their opinions and thought process, et cetera, et cetera. So we're getting even more crap out there than we would before from people who don't even hardly watch football. They write about sports, but they don't really watch that much football. So we're just getting fed all this crap. And
I've seen a lot of that.
And David Hyde from Sun Sentinel, he threw out, it would take 3 first-round picks, and he's all for it, which made people say, oh, Miami's going to go do it. No. He just said he was for it, which he shouldn't be for it. He's stupid, but I'm definitely not for it. So forget, and I don't think Miami's willing to do that. They're not willing to give up, what it would take to get him. But right. Tua, it's a different story with Tua. Let's just assume Cincinnati stays at 1 and drafts Burrow. Then we start getting into this, okay, is somebody going to jump up to get Tua? Or is either Washington or Detroit gonna go ahead and take Tua? I know Washington's a little bit of a long shot because they have Haskins. I know, Lewis, you've said the owner Daniel Snyder is a Haskins guy.
Dwayne Haskins was Daniel Snyder's pick. Forget the GM. He wanted Dwayne Haskins and he got him.
But they've got a new coach there now, so you never know what direction they're thinking and what they're going. Redskins could take Tua. I'm not saying they will, but they could. It's still a possibility. We can't sit here 100% and say, no way it happens. That's the point. That's the point I'm going to make. So I'm going to keep hammering that. The Lions are definitely a threat to draft Tua. Stafford's been often hurt. Yes, Patricia, I understand. He needs a quarterback to go with this year. But Chad, I'm going to ask you this question. If he doesn't draft a quarterback or doesn't draft Tua at the 3rd pick, who is he going with right now at quarterback?
Who is Matt Patricia going with?
Who is Matt Patricia probably going with?
He's going with Stafford.
Okay, if he drafts Tua at the 3rd overall pick, who is Matt Patricia going with at quarterback?
If he drafts Tua, he's going with Stafford.
He's going with Stafford either way. Yes, I understand. Right. Then you don't get that pick that helps out your team and that
And your career
possibly
path.
Patricia's got some heat on him. Detroit's a known team to be a little bit more patient with their coaches. They may decide that he's the guy. I'm not saying that they're going to do that. They may decide that he's the guy. Okay, the Chargers, until he does, and again, by the time people listen to this, perhaps the Chargers have signed Cam Newton. Scratch him off the list to move up for Tua if that happens. Cam Newton's going to start for the Chargers. They're going to give him at least probably a 3 or 4 year deal. I think that makes him the starter. I think it takes him off. But as of right now, as we speak, the Chargers are a threat to move up big time because they're at 6. I feel that they're a threat to move up. They're probably the biggest threat. Carolina was before, but now it seems clear they're not heading in that direction. What were you about to say, Lewis?
I'm going to turn the question around on you. Okay, so if you say that the Chargers are the biggest threat, what are they going to give up to move all the way up to 3?
Well, obviously they're going to give. See, a lot of these teams that don't have multiple first-round picks are going to get into the 2021 probably. They're going to have to dip into there likely. When you're moving up for a quarterback, it's always a higher price than if you're moving up for another player, unless, of course, you're Atlanta and you give up the world for Julio Jones. Beyond that, when you're moving up for a quarterback, it's going to cost you more. So probably they'll have to dip some into their next season's draft picks. Likely. But
not only would they be banking on Tua getting better and being that guy, they would also have to hope and pray that he can get the job done with minimal help because they can't draft new guys to help him out.
It isn't a minimal help with San Diego. Tom Brady, the only reason Tom Brady is not a Charger right now is because he was too much of a puss to go play against Mahomes twice a year and know he wasn't going to win that division. He was going to have to go to the Super Bowl. He was going to have to go to the Super Bowl a way he's never been before as a wild card team because they weren't going to win that division even if he went there. And he knew that. He picked the team that had the most weapons that he felt had the path of least resistance to win the division, possibly win a bye, have home field advantage, all of that. That was not happening in the AFC West with Mahomes and the Chiefs, and he knew it. And I said that before. I said the Chargers are the best landing spot for him, except he is not going to want to be in that division and have to do it as a wild card. He's never been to the Super Bowl as a wild card team. He's always had that easy, nice, play 2 games, usually both at home, then go to the Super Bowl. It's been nice and cushy for him playing in the crap AFC East where you always win your division and you win 12 or 13 games. Wasn't going to happen there. He chose the best scenario for him. That was not the Chargers. The Chargers are no slouch team. I understand they didn't have a great season, but they're no slouch team. They felt like quarterback was their issue. Now, the big thing for them is, are they willing to sit and wait a year for Tua? But they have talent. But let's say if it gets to the draft and they haven't figured out their quarterback situation, well, guess what? I mean, are they going to just draft Herbert and they think that's going to fix it as a rookie? No, they're not going to draft any rookie and think their quarterback situation's fixed. So if
somebody's got to draft Herbert.
If they get to the draft and they haven't signed Winston, they haven't signed Cam Newton, guess what? That means they're riding with Tyrod Taylor whether they drafted a quarterback or not. Kind of a little bit similar to Detroit.
Do you think Jameis Winston is better than Justin Herbert?
I would say that an NFL coach is going to be more willing to put him in as a starter due to his experience than as a rookie if you feel you have a talented team and you're trying to win games. Yes, I understand that he threw 30 interceptions last year. I'm not saying it's a good idea. I'm going to say most NFL coaches, they got some cockiness. They got some bravado. They think they can coach guys up. They think they can coach the interceptions out of them, et cetera, et cetera. They're going to try and knock down those interceptions. I mean, come on. If Winston comes into the league next year as a starter 16 games, obviously one of his big focuses is he's not going to try and throw as many interceptions. Those interceptions are going to go down. Yeah, it might go down to more of like a Jay Cutler number, like 22, or Eli Manning, but they're going to go down. It's going to be a focus. If the Chargers get to the draft and they have not addressed quarterback at all, they are obviously a threat. If they sign Cam Newton, they're not. And this conversation may be a moot point by the time people listen to this, because Cam just got let go officially a few hours ago as we're recording.
Yeah, I think it was today, actually.
Yeah, it was today. They released Cam today. Nobody wanted to trade for him, and now he's going to be free to talk with whoever he wants. Apparently, Xavier Howard liked the picture that he put on Instagram, and now everybody's like, oh, he's going to come up. No,
He's not coming to Miami.
He's coming to Miami.
All right, I got another team for you. That's a big threat. I'm not done with the threats. To move up.
Hit us with it.
The Jacksonville Jaguars. They have 2 first-round picks. They let Nick Foles go. They are in rebuild mode. They are in. Who did they sign? They didn't sign like a starter caliber. They are in a mode that they're in a rebuild mode. And why not move up and grab a guy like Tua to rebuild? Now, I'm not saying any of these will happen. I'm just saying these are all possibilities. Another team that has multiple first-round picks and is a possibility simply because of their coach, even though they have a starting quarterback and they just signed somebody, can never take out the Raiders. You just can't do it because it's just Gruden, Mayock. They're the TV, reality show running an NFL team over there, and they love the big show. I mean, why not go and grab 2? I'm telling you, they're the type of guys that would do it.
No, I understand the personality part of it.
But you have to consider all that. That's what I'm saying. And I'm going to and I don't think there's really any more other real threats to do it. New England, they have a lot of picks. They're picking at 23.
Yeah, but they have a lot of late picks. They always accumulate a bunch of late picks.
Yeah, granted, they have a lot of late picks. Obviously, one other team that are completely, this is like throwing it out in left field because it wouldn't kill them. Like if they cut their quarterback, they've already paid him a bulk of his money, but I don't see them cutting him to do it. The 49ers, they have multiple first-round picks, and they might decide, you know what, we're going to go with Garoppolo one more year, but we're not 100% sold. We're going to make you play for your season this year.
Yeah, they just made it to the 8th. No.
They are a way outside chance, but I'm just saying they could possibly be the ones to do it. And my point of this is, if none of these teams decide, all these quarterback needy teams, some of them who have ammo, if they let Tua slide to 5, and they know Miami's going to take Tua if he's sitting there at 5. If they let that happen, I'm going to wonder if Miami takes Tua. Because that makes me wonder, is that fear of Tua being a risk truly a real thing? Is that a real thing or not? I'll wonder if all these teams are going to just sit on their hands and hope Miami doesn't take Tua at 5 if he was their guy. Forget Burrow. Burrow is gone. Burrow's going to Cincinnati. Burrow's not even on people's. He's on the board, but he's not on the board. Tua is probably the number 1 quarterback on everyone's board because Burrow's out of the picture. He's going to Cincinnati. You're going to let the number 1 quarterback, if you're a needy team and you have a little bit of ammo, just sit there and go to Miami? That means he wasn't your number 1 for whatever reason. So I'm wondering if he's not anyone else's number 1, is he Miami's number 1 if he just goes down to 5 and nobody jumps up to grab him? Well, it's just a thought that I've had in my head. I hope that if he's there at 5, we take him. But I'm kind of wondering if he goes to 5, are we going to shock the world and not draft him either at 5? I'm part of me is kind of wondering. So I'm thinking either the guy slides past 5 or somebody has to go up ahead of Miami to get him. I believe that's probably what's going to happen. I don't believe for a second we sit at 5 and grab Tua. I just don't think that's going to happen.
Well, apparently some big boards think he could slide all the way to 16. Like some mock drafts have him going all the way to 16th overall, and I'm just thinking to myself, I don't know who made that big board, but somebody needs to smack him upside the head. There's no way Tua's going to fall that far down. But
see, I don't believe he's going to fall down either. I believe he's going to go before Miami's pick at 5. Whether that's Miami that goes and get him or someone else does, I believe someone, somehow, we see it happen all the time. I know you can go through these teams and state how it doesn't make sense. You can make arguments for every single team I mentioned why it doesn't make sense for Washington, Haskins. Doesn't make sense for Detroit. They need somebody that can help them now. Doesn't make sense for the Chargers. They've got some talent. They need somebody that can help them now. Raiders have 2 quarterbacks. San Fran, Ron, you're full. What are you talking about? You're smoking weed. Stop talking about San Fran's not moving up. You know what I mean? You can say all these reasons. How many times in the NFL do we see teams do stuff and we're like, what? You know what I mean? Like, what are you doing? Like, what is going on? How many times? Almost every single draft we see it. So why would we assume this wouldn't be any different? There are always curveballs and what the heck's every single season.
No, I understand that part of it, but I'm going to also say this. If I'm the Dolphins, I'm not making the first call. I'm not making that first bid because this is the thing that apparently people want. This is why I get so frustrated. People, it's like, do whatever it takes. Well, who gets to decide what whatever it takes means? Because let's look at it this way. Every team in the NFL knows that the Dolphins have the angle when it comes to draft picks. No one has more than them. No one has more picks in the first 100 than them. And so because of that, if one of your wild card teams decide, aside from the Lions, of course, if one of those teams decide that they want to jump up and get Tua, whoever the Lions get that call from, the next call they're going to make before they take the offer is going to be to Miami. And all Miami has to do is, we'll give you that +1. And that's it. They won the trade. That's all they got to do. So if they're going to do that, all I'm going to say is that you let the other teams decide whatever it takes means. Do not be the one to decide what it's going to be, because then you're going to have to get to haggling and you're going to end up giving up more than you should.
I agree. I think this is something that cannot happen pre-draft. It needs to be something that happens on draft day. I don't think anyone's going to jump up and do anything before the draft. I think it's just too risky because
the Bengals pick.
Yeah, exactly. You can unless it's the Bengals pick, or unless you feel there are two guys that you just love. Like, I keep on hearing people, we just need to move up to 3. Well, what if somebody moves up to 2? You can't move up to 3.
Anybody who moves up to 2 wants Chase Young.
Yeah.
Anybody who moves up to 2 wants Chase Young.
Maybe. Or maybe if they see somebody, Miami jumped up to 3 pre-draft, which they never do to get Tua, because somebody could go up to 2. Maybe they decide, well, we want Tua, so we're going up to 2. You're stupid, Miami. Why did you wait? I mean, that's not happening. We're not moving up to 3 pre-draft. We might move up to 3 after 1 and 2 have picked. I personally don't think anyone's moving up pre-draft. That's my opinion, especially with Cincinnati kind of maybe throwing it out there that pick might be for sale. And I have a feeling if anybody is throwing out there, let's go, Miami needs to go get Burrow, it's probably Cincinnati, because they're trying to throw out feelers to see who is really interested in Burrow, who is interested in giving us a haul for this first pick. Because I agree with Chad, they need a lot more than just a quarterback, a whole lot more.
The only team that I'm hearing is Miami, and for that reason, it's like, yeah, it's all bullcrap. There's no way, because again, this is what I've been saying. Burrow's not special in, like, I get his numbers, world record breaking numbers, good for Joe Burrow. On film, there's nothing about him that makes you say, wow. Like, the only one who really is wow is Tua and Jordan Love, and both have their own little things that are going to keep them from being the top guy. So, but Joe Burrow, like, we're talking about Justin Herbert being the boring one. Joe Burrow made a lot of really wow plays, but is his skill set really wow? And that I don't know for sure. I'm not a draft expert. I'm sure that there are going to be some evaluators that say that here's this, and this about him. Fine, I'll take it and I'll learn from it. But as of right now, I'm not seeing, again, this is not the can't miss number 1 once in a decade guy who's going to set the Bengals or whoever picks him on the path to Super Bowl stardom. I just don't see it. I don't see it.
I agree with you guys. I kind of walk through the scenarios of realistic, and Ron's right. Anybody can jump up, but
yeah, there's always weird stuff that
realistic?
happens. Minka wasn't supposed to fall at a 10 all those years ago.
Well, and I look at it like, if you're Miami and you're at 5, there's going to be a good player come to 5. Nobody can change that. And so, is somebody going to jump up to take Tua? Maybe. I don't think the Redskins, almost zero chance the Redskins are going to take him. I think that's extremely low. Will somebody trade up with the Redskins? I think then the Redskins, you have to weigh, we're not going to take Chase Young, and how far are you going to drop back? Because the Redskins right now are in a division where they could compete if they bring in a few good players. And so I just don't see the Redskins. Chase Young's probably the most talented player in the draft.
Chase Young is once in a decade, not Joe Burrow. Young is.
And so I just don't think the Redskins can afford to pass on him unless it's a really lucrative trade offer where somebody's going to have to give them quite a bit, because anybody that's coming back, like the Giants are not moving up to number 2. And so now they're the 3rd pick. The Lions are not moving up to number 2. they're with the third pick. Those teams aren't going to move up. And so then if the Dolphins, if the Dolphins don't do it, you're going all the way back to the Chargers. So now if you're the Redskins, you're falling all the way back to 6. You're probably going to need another number 1 from the Chargers. And I know, everybody wants to, but it's a very difficult move to make as a head coach and a GM to give up a lot for a player that is not going to contribute at all.
And not to mention, the Chargers GM is notorious for hating to make trades like that. He hates it. He has. Avoided it.
I don't think Anthony Lynn has the freedom right now because if you go get Tua, there's a lot of assuming going on that he's going to be a superstar next year, and he's essentially going to have not played hardly at all until next year, and you're probably going to have to go through a year of growing pains with him. I mean, I don't know what people think if he's Superman. I know there's some people that I think are way skewed that think he's so special that he's just going to walk out in the field and instantly be a Pro Bowl quarterback, and that may not be until 2022 that Tua is starting to play at a higher level once he starts learning the NFL game and reacting at the speed. And you've got the whole concern of if you research his injury, even if he gets a full bill of health.
And in spite of the videos he's been posting lately.
His videos, he's going to, I'm sure his pro day he'll look good too throwing the football. That's not the problem with Tua.
I don't think he's going to have a pro day, though. I don't think
whatever he does, Tua throwing the football is not going to be an issue. Nobody's worried about that. The issue is his hip is more likely to have that injury reoccur again. And the few people that have had it in the NFL have continued to have it. And people that have had even hip injuries continue to have reoccurring hip injuries. And so you're looking at a player that won't play next year. You're looking at a player that has a high likelihood of developing complications to that injury over the course of his career. And you have a quarterback that has a high risk of having that same injury again that would end in his career immediately. And you got to wonder, like, how well is he going to hold up when he's got 300-pound linemen hitting him and falling on him and everything that goes into playing that position. And I'm not saying don't draft Tua. I'm just pointing out, like, if you're going to – because what you're talking about is a scenario where teams got to give up a lot of capital. This isn't Miami taking him at 5. This is a team giving up their first-round pick this year, plus probably it's going to have to be a first-round pick next year.
Plus more.
Minimum. And so I look at the Redskins with Dwayne Haskins. This does not help their team at all to grab Tua. It alienates Dwayne Haskins immediately. So if I'm the coach of the Redskins and I draft Tua, how are you going to
That's
sell
Ron Rivera,
that?
Right?
So how is he going to sell that to Dwayne Haskins? Don't worry about it. This is Dwayne Haskins' second year, and he knows that Tua's coming in behind him.
And let's be real, Tua's better than him. Let's be real, Tua's better than he is.
Maybe he is, maybe he's not. But you're going to go through this season now, and you're going to do it with the quarterback who's disgruntled immediately. That's how you're going to start your season. I mean, I don't care what people say. People are professional. Dwayne Haskins hasn't shown me anything at all that would show me he wouldn't be throwing a fit. He would be upset, and he would be probably demanding to be traded. And so,
who wouldn't be? Seriously, like you get one shot, and
if you have like a Ryan Fitzpatrick or somebody like that, they're going to be okay. Or if it's Tom Brady or Drew Brees, right? Because they know that doesn't matter. But Dwayne Haskins, so if you're the Redskins, you're passing on who's the number 1 rated player in the draft in Chase Young, and you're drafting a player that's going to completely turn your clubhouse upside down. Your quarterback's going to throw a fit. He's not going to trust the coach. He's not going to trust the management. So that's how, because Tua's not going to play this year. He shouldn't play. That's how you're going to start your season if you're the Redskins, with a quarterback who's disgruntled. That, to me, would be a terrible move. Now, if they had Dwayne Haskins traded, that's one thing, but I don't think they're going to get Dwayne Haskins traded to get anything realistic for him. You go to 3, now you're at the Lions. Matt Patricia is the coach that is on the tightest hot seat right now. I don't know if you guys listened to Darius Slay's talk about why he wanted off that team and what Matt Patricia did, but it was highly inappropriate.
Lost all respect.
Yeah, highly inappropriate. And don't forget, when Matt Patricia got hired by the Lions, there was also another scandal that kind of had to get swept under the rug with him from when he was back in the college days or something like that. I don't remember exactly what is after research, but there was a scandal related to Matt Patricia that he had to deny, and that was right when he got hired as the head coach of the Lions. So whether or not that stuff's completely true, and it doesn't matter if you're the PR and you're the owner of the Lions, you don't like that. You don't like that people are questioning the ethics of your coach and that your coach is doing things that are morally suspect. And so that does nothing but make Matt Patricia's seat even hotter because he's only won 9 games since he's been there. He's 9-22-1. If Matt Patricia drafts Tua, it does nothing to help him this year. And he just lost his best corner. You can't run Matt Patricia's defense without some guys that can cover. At this point, I don't think they have a choice. And I think the Lions already accepted that they don't have a choice. They've got to draft Okudah at 3 for Patricia to even have a chance at executing his defense. That's why they paid Chase Daniels. Like, if they were really going to make a run at a backup quarterback, you don't go pay a bunch of money to a backup quarterback right now. You wait till after the draft. But they did it before the draft. They wouldn't pay Chase Daniels, so it would look crazy for them to turn out and cut him and then lose that money off their cap if they're going to bring in a rookie. So you're going to have to bring in Tua. You're going to have to sit him. And then if you're Matt Patricia, your chance of winning that division is dropped dramatically. You don't have a good corner. You've got to defend Aaron Rodgers. You've got the Vikings, who are still pretty good. And so the Lions, Matt Patricia is going to lose his job. I don't think he's going to make the year if he doesn't start the season at least 4-4. He'll probably get fired mid-season. He knows that. And so if somebody wants to trade with the Lions, so if I come to the Lions and I'm, say, the Chargers say, we'll give you our 6th overall pick and we'll give you our number 1 next year. That does him no good because Matt Patricia still doesn't get Okudah.
He won't be there to enjoy it.
Because he's fallen back to 6 now, and so he loses his corner. He's getting pick next year that won't help him, and it's going to help the next coach coming in a lot. Thank you for the extra number 1 that I get to start my coaching career with. But Matt Patricia's not stupid. That does him no good. He's got to get the corner. So the only
I have a question for you though. Do we know? And I don't know much about the Lions' organizational structure. I mean, how do we know that the owner and the GM haven't really decided we're going to do what's best for this team going forward? If Matt Patricia can win under those circumstances, great. But we need to do what's best going forward. We don't know that Matt Patricia has his button on who does and who does not get drafted on this team.
From what I've read, I don't know what conversations are going on, obviously, between the owner and the GM, but the GM and Matt Patricia are kind of in bed together. I think they're both going to get fired, is what I'm hearing is going to happen if they don't.
Okay, you know more than I did because I knew absolutely nothing. I was really just asking the question.
I guess my point is I don't see it being realistic at all that the Redskins are trading out or the Lions are going to trade out unless it's just a crazy offer, which could happen. But the reason I don't think it's going to happen is because of the risk I was highlighting with Tua. The team to be worried about is the Giants because the Giants really need offensive line. And I pointed out last week, Lewis, that they signed the second best corner. They wanted Byron Jones and Miami beat him out, but then they went and got Bradbury from Carolina. He's not in the Byron Jones shutdown category, but he's a solid corner. Solid enough that they don't have to worry about getting the D-back. And I think the Giants already know more likely the Lions are taking corner because this is not a great draft for corner. And once you go past Okudah, it's a huge drop-off if you need a starting corner in this draft.
And even then, if the Giants are really an issue, again, don't they pick 4th?
Well, to me, if you're watching what they're doing, so the Lions are paid money for Chase Daniels. To me, that's the Lions. They're not going to say that, but they're not drafting Tua. That tells me they're drafting Okudah, and they kind of know that unless a team blows their socks off with an offer.
Right, and the Giants come next. They need a tackle. They're going to get first pick at the best tackle in the draft.
I agree, but this draft has a lot of good offensive tackle prospects. So the Giants may consider dropping back to like 6 with the Chargers because they can still get pretty good tackle at 6 if the Chargers want to try to jump up in front of the Dolphins.
And if that's the truth, and again, I go back to my previous point, teams are going to try to get everything they possibly can. 5 is better than 6, and all the Giants have to do is say, hey, they just offered us this, or do you want to match that, or you want to give us something better? Sure.
So,
okay.
So if you're the Dolphins, there's 2 things to go. Here's what I predict would happen. If the Dolphins decide Tua's the guy, and I really don't believe that that's necessarily the case right now. I disagree with Ron that teams are all thinking that Tua is clearly the number 2 prospect. I don't think that's the case. I think with the injury, that's changed the dynamics, and I think half the teams in the league have Herbert as the second best prospect, and I think that's being
just on availability, not so much talent.
He's the only quarterback in this draft I think you could potentially start on opening day. Because he's played 3 years, I believe, at Oregon in a pro-style system. He's got a lot more experience.
No, he went back for his senior year. So
right, and that was his senior year. So I think if you're a team like the Chargers, that's probably your best chance if you want to start the rookie this year. I mean, I don't know if the Chargers want to or not, but Tua's not going to play, obviously, with the injury. So Herbert, I think, on other teams' board, I think this is just inherently what some teams like. They like the fact Herbert can make throws that the other quarterbacks in the draft can't. He's going to be able to, with his arm talent, he's going to be able to make throws that are special. I think they like that he's big. He's a good athlete. He's just a prototypical quarterback, and that's what some teams still want. And Tua is as much not prototypical as you can get. He's left-handed. The way he plays is kind of his own style. And so you're looking at a quarterback that's different, which is appealing to some people, but other people like, no, we want our prototypical quarterback. We want Herbert. And so I'm kind of pointing out some teams are going to have him rated higher for those reasons. So that trade
it almost feels like whoever drafts Tua is going to have to make an offense that suits what he's good at. Herbert is a plug and play. Tua is not.
For some offenses. Now, with that being said, my point being is I'm not sold that Miami wants Tua, and that's everybody's assuming, but it wouldn't shock me at all if Miami just says we'd prefer Herbert, but we'd also take Simmons. Whoever falls at 5, they may say, or we'll take worst. Miami may just take best player available at 5 and be fine with that. And you know what? If Tua doesn't come or Herbert doesn't come, we're fine with just going with Rosen and Fitzpatrick. Those aren't terrible quarterbacks to us. We're going to
draft Jordan Love. We haven't even talked about him all day.
Rosen is a terrible quarterback. Thank you.
Okay, well,
maybe Rosen's a terrible quarterback. I'm not advocating that I think he's the guy, but
I always love to say that to you because I know that you always say, Rosen's not bad. I mean, he's blah, blah, blah. And I always like to say Rosen's horrible. Next question.
Right. Well, I honestly think he's better than once you pass those first 3 quarterbacks, he's significantly better than anybody else in this draft at this point in his career.
At this point, yes. But as far as ceiling goes, and this is why, again, I bring up Jordan Love again. Everybody's talking about the next Patrick Mahomes as far as his ceiling. And it's like, if there's anybody you should redshirt, if it's not Tua, it's Jordan Love. Let him sit down and let him see if you can get that guy. Absolutely. And Jordan Love will be available.
At 5, yes. I don't know. It's going to be interesting to see where Jordan Love goes because the Mahomes factor has increased his value quite a bit. But anyway, here's what, if you're the Dolphins, this is the way I would play this out. So if you're the Dolphins and you decide Tua is who we want, what you want to offer is your second-round pick, Miami's original second-round pick. That pick is a higher second-round pick than the Chargers, and it's a higher, obviously, than pick anybody behind the Chargers. So if you offer, whether it's the Lions or the Giants, we'll give you our original second-round pick to give you 5. I think the Lions are going to be interested in that because they're pretty confidently going to get Okudah. I don't think the Giants are going to take him now that they've just signed Bradbury and they needed the offensive lineman. I think the Giants are going to take Wirtz or they're going to trade back. And so if you're the Lions, you can feel pretty comfortable taking the Dolphins second, letting the Dolphins jump up, and you're taking what you can get and still get your player. If the Chargers want to move up, they're going to have to give more than their second-round pick to move up, right? And so the Chargers then are probably going to have to give up their first-round pick minimum plus something, right? Because they're got to swap, so you're giving them 6. To be clear, Miami's offering their 5th-round pick and their original second. So the Chargers can't offer their original 6th-round pick, which is worse than the Dolphins, and their original 2nd-round pick, which is worse than the Dolphins. They've got to offer like a 4th or a 5th or something else on top of that. And I still don't know if that would appeal to the Lions because they really want that corner. I think offering that pick puts anybody else in position you can't get to a cheap. So somebody like Jacksonville or somebody like that, the Lions might be enticed to drop back if they offer a lot, but if you're setting that standard, the team's going to have to give up quite a bit to get to move up. You're not going to let anybody just snake him cheap, right? That's if he's your guy. That's what I offer, and then you just wait, and if a team wants to try to bid you, maybe you have to give up your 26th round pick overall to move up, but I don't think they're going to have to. I think that's reality. Now, I agree with Ron on one point. I'll jump back, Ron. You're out of your mind if you think the 49ers are moving up. That's nuts. That's not happening. The Raiders.
I'm just spitballing here, guys.
I know.
We got to fill some time here, man.
You're talking about a Super Bowl team right now. Garoppolo has not been a bad quarterback, and
Garoppolo's not a great quarterback either. If he was a good quarterback, they'd be Super Bowl champs, in my opinion.
He was a good quarterback in New England. It's a New England syndrome. Everybody who leaves sucks.
Man, they were just in the Super Bowl. So if you're not a player or two away,
on the back of Raheem Mostert.
Right. So the 49ers they're more worried about trying to win a Super Bowl, and Tua is not helping that at all. And so they're not going to crazy, and that'd be a monster amount they'd have to give up to come up from that far back.
They'd have to give up their whole draft. There's no way.
Raiders are a little more scary because Gruden and Mayock, they're kind of wild cards, and they do have the draft capital. If they and Gruden loves quarterbacks, he absolutely loves quarterbacks. And so I know they signed Mariota and they got Carr, but I kind of agree with Ron. You got to. It wouldn't shock me if the Raiders offer their other first or something.
It would be box office, but if box office is what you're looking for, you don't deserve a job for real. You really don't.
I don't know what to make of Gruden and Mayock, but they're going into Vegas. They want to be.
They could offer Carr along with that.
And have Carr.
They could offer Carr along with that and sign Mariota. Maybe that's their plan. Maybe that's why they signed Mariota.
Do you have a trade partner?
Trade Carr and some picks and move up the quarterback.
Who wants Carr?
You really think the Lions are going to switch Stafford for Carr though? That's going to help them?
Why not? Because Stafford's just he's just so unreliable right now.
And Carr is?
Stafford plays when healthy is pretty good. I don't know if you can say.
I'm just throwing out there some possibilities, man.
Well, I hear you, Ron,
but Dolphins, if you're set on Tua, you got to be aware that weird stuff can happen. Could Jacksonville do it? Maybe. Jacksonville's in a tough situation right now because, look, the Colts, they just got Phillip Rivers. They have a good offensive line. They have a decent defense. Houston, granted, I think they're the worst run team in the league right now, but they still have, with Watson, they still have a pretty damn good team in that division. And the Titans just went to the AFC Championship game. The Jaguars are a long way from the top of that division right now, trying to get up top. They need to use those picks. I think trading off for Tua, and again, I'm kind of pointing out Tua is a team I think you're more realistically looking, if you're trying to win with him, is more like 2022. And so you have to be in a position that you feel comfortable stashing him for a year, not playing, and then going through a year of growth with him. I just don't think many teams are in that position. The Raiders is the only one crazy enough to do it. I don't think the Jaguars can afford to do it. And I think anybody else is coming from a long enough ways back that if Miami really, really wants him and throws their second in there, I don't think teams are wanting to give up the capital with the risk to go up and take him. So I think either Miami offers the Giants or the Lions their second, and that's what that trade will be, or that'll be it. And I think they'll just wait. I just don't see a blockbuster team throwing a whole bunch to come up and get Tua. I just don't see it.
I mean, the only thing that, again, and I come back to this, Kansas City was a team with, an average quarterback. But they were trying. They were an average quarterback. They were trying to make the playoffs, pretty much making the playoffs, trying to compete against the Pittsburghs, the New Englands, trying to compete against the Chargers in their own division. And what do they go and do instead of drafting a guy with their first round pick that can help them now and help them win? They move all the way up and give a ton of capital to go from 27th to 10 to draft a quarterback and sit him for a year.
But Andy Reid wasn't on the hot seat.
I understand that Andy Reid wasn't on the hot seat, but
Alex Smith was definitely not somebody you want to go into battle with.
Yeah, he's still trying to win. He's still trying to win his division. He's still trying to compete with the better teams. He's trying to get to the Super Bowl because that's what his expectations are. But he had the vision to know that what he had at the time wasn't going to get him there. It only takes one team to know that feels, you know what, I feel like I can win with this guy. I just can't win with him this year. And I think it's worth this move. Now, I understand there's not a lot of guys with the clout, with the experience, with the background, with the history, and with the position that Andy Reid was in. I understand
that's just one factor.
He's in a little bit of a unique situation. I get that. There's not 31 teams that are in that same situation. I mean, honestly, one of the few teams that's in a situation that can draft Tua, sit him for a year, and no one has to sweat it is Miami. You know, they are one of the few teams that can take Tua or even Jordan Love and just sit on him with a first-round pick. They have all these picks. They have a second-year coach who coached the heck out of a team that most people thought wasn't going to win a game, and he managed to pull 5 wins out of it. And actually, he managed to pull those 5 wins out of the last 9 games. So in the last 9 games, he was over 500.
Ron,
you know what I mean? He
He beat two. I get all that, but what I'm saying is it only takes one team, and for Miami to just sit there and wait till 5 if they truly believe Tua is their guy, I don't think they will. And if they're willing to do that, I don't think they think Tua is their guy. That's just my opinion.
I'm gonna close it with.
I'll throw in there with that it's a parallel that you've got the Andy Reid moved up with the Chiefs. You got to look at a team, though, that has a quarterback that's on the back end of his career that's been lackluster. I mean, you could throw in Andy Dalton. He's obviously not a risk. You could say maybe Ben Roethlisberger. We've got their number 1 pick. But that and Patrick Mahomes was healthy. You know, no matter what video
That's what I wanted to say.
Is Tua could be one injury away from being done. There's a huge injury risk with him right now that wasn't present, and that changes the dynamics of making a blockbuster to move up and give a whole bunch to move up and get him.
And the other thing I want to interject is that it's not just that; it's also the fact that Mahomes was healthy. If the idea that Mahomes had to sit down was more about his development, not so much his health, that's the big difference here. If Mahomes somehow it clicked right away for him, and they decided, oh, he's better than Alex Smith now, they didn't even have to worry about it. Oh, yeah, sure, go ahead, Pat. It's all yours. They didn't have to think about it. It would have been done. Tua is very different because not only is he an injury risk, not only is he in danger of not having a long career, there is literally zero chance he plays the year he's drafted. Even if he is better and everybody knows he's better, you still have to sit him down because you cannot put him out there until he's 100% rehabbed from his injury. You can't throw him out there. Mahomes, you could if he turned out to be better right away. Tua, you can't. You can't.
Because Mahomes was the backup quarterback for the Chiefs.
He was the backup. But he was the backup.
It's a fair point, Lewis. I can't argue that one. That's a very fair point.
With that, I think Love will be who the move up for. Somebody's going to trade up for Jordan Love because of Patrick Mahomes. Because Jordan Love, as much as Tua is special to people, Tua does not do stuff that Patrick Mahomes does. Patrick Mahomes' arm is unreal in the throws he makes. And you watch film on Jordan Love, and he makes those crazy kind of throws. And I think people are going to think, at the time, Patrick Mahomes was not a highly regarded prospect. He was obviously an NFL prospect, but
because it was so bizarre.
Can't miss. But suddenly that works now with Andy Reid, and so Jordan Love, they're going to be looking at, he's on small college. That's the guy that people are going to chase up. Like you're going to see a team maybe trade up from the 20s up into the teens to go chase Jordan Love, or maybe even as soon as like 10 or 11, they're going to make a run at Jordan Love. I do think that absolutely could happen because he, like you said, he can play right now. Like if you want to put him as your number 2, but that's tough with Tua because he basically he's not even going to be on your team at all contributing. So, and I have to question how much can Tua learn because he doesn't get to play the preseason. He's not going to be healthy for that. He doesn't get to really do contact in practice, and so he's going to be in the film room. But how ready can you get Tua when you can't put him on the field? That's a real legitimate question.
And that's pretty much the whole discussion. We'll probably see more of this stuff coming on in the following weeks, and we will be here to discuss it. We're going to go ahead and call it here. We've had a nice, good, long discussion. Ron, are we going to be able to count on you next week to have you on again if something crazy happens?
I'm ready.
All right, sounds good then. Hopefully we get to see your charming smile all over again because we miss seeing your face, man. It's not the same thing. I'm going to have to superimpose your Twitter profile picture and just kind of stick you on there.
You guys are the only ones that miss seeing my face.
Nah, man, we miss you, man. All right, so thank you all so much. What?
You didn't even respond to that, man. It was like somebody had just sent you a horrible pic through your DMs or something. You just had this hesitation. You're like, okay, Ron, whatever, whatever you said, buddy. All right, Lewis, I'll let you wrap it up now. I'm not going to mess with you anymore.
All right. So, like I said, thank you all so much for joining us. We hope you enjoyed it. Hope you all are staying safe. We'll be right here next week for some more content. And, go ahead and check out the Brawl Network. Lots of cool stuff happening out there. Lots of whatever team you want to look. Actually, might be not a bad idea to go check out and see what the Lions Brawl or the Colts Brawl or the Chargers Brawl, any of those guys are talking about, because who knows, maybe they have some insight we don't. Maybe we'll see if they actually even want to not draft Tua or get Jeffrey Okudah. Who knows? Maybe they know something we don't. I should probably definitely check into that. Okay. Thank you all so much for joining us. We'll be here next week with our good friend Chad Ronnebaum and our good friend Ron Caniff, and maybe we'll get Dante to hop in here. We'll just make it a foursome. So again, thank you all so much. We will see you next week.